Go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is a workshop regarding the Triumph Gulf Coast funds. And County Administrator, you kicking us off?
Yes, sir. I'll get us kicked off. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Um, I'd like to read through this, and then I'll introduce you our guest for today. This workshop is intended to allow presentation and discussions related to the Gulf Coast Triumph Gulf Coast Funds and Gulf Coast Economic Corridor Act. Gulf Coast Incorporated and its Board of Directors, recent Triumph decisions, board responsibilities, and proposed Triumph projects. Triumph Gulf Coast is charged with establishing an application and evaluation process for accepting and awarding projects meeting priorities established in Section 288.8010 Florida statutes. The Triumph Gulf Coast has the authority to establish criteria and ranking system to evaluate all project approvals received. Each Board of County Commissioners of the 8 counties is required by Section 288.8013 Florida statute to solicit programs and projects from other elected boards, i.e. Wakulla County School Board, City of St. Mark, City of Sopchoppy, and submit to Triumph Gulf Coast a list of recommended projects and programs, including those submitted by other elected boards. The list is dynamic and may be updated as needed. Triumph Gulf Coast has a sole discretion and responsibility of selecting the projects and programs to be funded with the TGC funds, including each county's allocation. Currently, the Restore Act dollars, the entire settlement was not received in a lump sum payment. The state received an initial payment of $400 million and transferred $300 million to Triumph Gulf Coast in 2017. 40% of the $300 million is allocated equally between the 8 counties for projects benefiting their county, which comes out to $15 million per county. The remaining amount of the settlement will be made to the state in annual installments of $106 million and $80 million, or 75% of each annual payment will be transferred to Triumph Gulf Coast over a 15-year period ending in 2033. Of each of the annual payments, 32% will be divided equally among the 8 counties for projects benefiting their county, which comes to about $3.1 million per county. Based on the current Section 288.801 Florida statutes, Wakulla County will be allocated an estimated $63 million over the next 15 years for projects benefiting Wakulla County. The Triumph Gulf Coast Board met on Tuesday, October 10th, 2017, and made decisions having direct impact to the 8 counties. First, a pre-screening application, which is part of the attachments, will be required, and dates establishing for when the pre-screening applications can be submitted. The first round of pre-screening applications will be accepted through November 15, 2017. To assist the board fulfill its duties pursuant to 288.8013 and facilitate project proposals for board consideration, staff requested the City of St. Mark's, City of Sopchoppy, and the Wakulla County School Board to attend this workshop and present their proposed projects. Next, staff will develop a Triumph Gulf Coast Wakulla County project form to be used by private businesses, community groups, and/or individuals wishing to submit a project for the board's consideration and recommendation to Triumph. An email was sent out on October 24, 2017 to the county's interested parties list with information on this workshop, Triumph, and Wakulla County project form. This time I would like to recognize we do have 2 guests. Our representative on the Triumph Gulf Coast Board is Jason Schoaf, and the attorney for the overall Triumph Gulf Coast Board is Scott Remington, and they'll be here to answer questions, give presentations as well. But at this time, it's Cherie's game.
Thank you.
That's her.
All right. Thank you. And a lot of what's in the presentation, David's already covered. And like he said, if there are questions, I'm going to direct them to Scott and Jason, which I think is very good. And I appreciate them being here today.
Do you mind pull that mic a little closer?
Is this close enough?
There you go.
All right. Now, the biggest challenge is seeing if I can make this work.
And while you're doing that, let me just make an announcement. If anyone would like to speak, fill out a speaker card with Miss Patty up front, and when we get to that point after we've heard the presentation, we'll invite the public to come up and speak as well.
Which one is it?
Right. That one right there. It was off.
Okay. So basically, I put together a real simplified timeline. As we all know, the Deeper Horizon event happened in 2010. A lot of times we just hear it as the BP oil spill. 2013, the legislature passed the first Gulf Coast Economic Corridor Act, and that's what created Triumph Gulf Coast Inc., its board of directors, and the laws that will govern the state's BP settlement of funds. Again, this is not the Restore Act. The Restore Act's federal, this is state. In 2015, Pam Bondi's office settled with BP for economic damages in the amount of $2 billion over a 15-year period. In 2016, the state received its first payment from BP of $400 million. And then the remaining payments will be made over the next 15 years starting next year. In 2017, it was a very good year for the 8 counties. That's when the Florida legislature revised the act, and I'll get into those revisions in just a sec. All right, so the first year, the first deposit, which is the $400 million, Triumph Gulf Coast gets $300 million or 75% of that. The state keeps $100 million so that they can settle attorney fees, administrative fees, etc. And of this amount, there was 40%, and I made a couple of mistakes on that page, and I will correct it, but the 8 counties get 40%, and of that 40%, it's distributed equally between the 8 counties, so that in essence, each county gets $1.15 million. Then the second schedule of payments, which start in 2019, that number is reduced down to 32%, and the percentage is 4%. So divided equally between the 8 counties comes out to $3.1 million per year. Reading in statute the way they have a lot of the financial breakdown is sometimes challenging to decipher it. So anyway, over the next 15 years, Wakulla County will receive a total of $63 million allocated to our county, not to us, but just in the Triumph bucket of funds. All funding decisions are made by Triumph. And I will repeat that a few times just because I want to make sure that everybody understands that us, Wakulla County, does not have, we don't evaluate projects, we don't accept applications, we have one role, and we'll cover that today. In addition to what I just mentioned, 2 additional board members were added, which is Jason Shove, who is here with us today, and Senator Don Gates, who was appointed by the House Speaker to represent Walton County. Triumph is charged with establishing and reviewing priorities for economic recovery, diversification, and enhancement of the 8 counties, establishing an application and award process, publishing a summary of the project and program of its intent to award at least 14 calendar days prior to the award, and then make awards based on projects or programs consistent with statute. This is a list of the criteria that each project must meet at least one of those, and I'm not going to read through each one of them, but as you can see, it does go all the way from projects that could reduce ad valorem to grants for tourism. Our role is to get a list of projects and submit them to Triumph. Awards may supplement, but they may not supplant existing funds, and that's very important. So we can't ask for funds for a project that we may be required to fund, our statutory authority to pay for things. So these funds can't be used in lieu of. It's for enhancement and new projects. The role of the Board of County Commissioners in each one of the 8 counties is to solicit projects from other elected boards, and in Wakulla County that's the school board, City of St. Marks, and the City of Sopchoppy. And then that list of projects, along with any other that the board wants to recommend, is submitted to Triumph. Again, that list is dynamic. We could bring you a list every 2 weeks, once a month, and it can be updated and submitted to Triumph. But individuals submit their applications direct to Triumph, not the county. As David was saying, October 10th, Triumph announced that they were going to do a mandatory pre-screening application. They would have open cycles for project applications to be submitted. The first deadline is November 15th. Triumph will hire a consulting firm to evaluate and review the applications. They will not do it themselves, nor will their direct staff do it. So it will have a third-party set of eyes, which I think is an excellent idea. We don't know how much of the $300 million, and neither do they, of what's going to be allocated or awarded. And expect an emphasis on shovel-ready projects, and buzzwords that you'll hear throughout are transformational, economic diversification, infrastructure, and sustainability. All right, I've moved over that. And to get us started, like David was saying earlier, is that we've met with Sopchoppy, City of St. Marks, and City of Sopchoppy. They've put together their list of projects, which they'll present today. And we sent out an email to the public trying to make sure that all of our citizens were aware of what was going on, so that the whole process is transparent, and they knew that they had an opportunity to participate and how to do that. And let's see, what else have we done? And we were also lucky to land the next Triumph board meeting here in Wakulla County, November 8th at the Community Center at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We've also added decision points.
Oh, sorry.
Decision points that we'll get to after the presentations and the speakers.
You vetted the Sopchoppy and St. Mark's projects through this list of,
St. Mark's.
has to meet this,
Because
because this list of criteria that may be provided for is pretty daggone narrow. Well, it's very, very narrow.
And like I say, that's what our form that we did, we asked them to say, what they thought their program fell under. But again, that'll be up to the evaluators at Triumph hires to make that determination whether or not it fits or not.
You could twist around ad valorem tax reduction rate to mean anything, Anything that you're not going to have to pay for in the future, you could say, well, I'm reducing ad valorem taxes.
Well,
We could pay for our county attorney with Triumph funds in, right?
to reduce ad valorem taxes on businesses that are trying to come into county and promote stuff.
That would be an indirect benefit,
Right.
right?
But, yeah.
And I think they're looking for, you say shovel-ready, how do you make ad valorem tax reduction shovel-ready?
Well, it could be that if, say, for instance, if, say, for instance, and correct me if I'm wrong, if we got Boeing coming in here and they want to come
Well, we
in.
don't. We know that's not going to
And
happen.
they're saying, okay, we're ready to come in and we want a 10-year break on our ad valorem taxes. That could be
Does
a
that
possible
mean-
project. So, that's questions these, Scott right there, he could definitely answer that, so.
And we're all very friendly people up here. Nothing's wrong. It's hard to wrap your head around this stuff because it looks like the legislature wrote it so narrowly, and y'all's intent may be a little different, but you have to follow statute unless statute gets changed, obviously. Maybe they'll change it, I don't know.
So Scott, Jason, is there anything you want to expand on or questions that?
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Scott Remington. I'm with the Clark Partington Law Firm and serve as General Counsel to Triumph Gulf Coast. I'd like to begin by just thanking all of you for having me over here today to speak with you. Jason Schoaf invited me glad to be here. Just for those of you that do not know, my law firm has 4 offices in the Triumph region: Pensacola, Destin, Walton County, and then one in Tallahassee just outside the region. I think we've got more lawyers in the Triumph region than any other law firm, and our lawyers live in 5 of the 8 counties covered with Triumph, including one that lives here in Crawfordville. So we're your neighbors, we're your friends, we're all part of this team trying to bring this together. You've raised an interesting question about ad valorem taxation. There's some ideas floating around, but I would caution you that in the 2013 language, ad valorem tax reduction was one of the permitted award categories. When that language went through the House during the 2017 legislative session, the House added a caveat that ad valorem tax reduction could not be for any specific business. So if Boeing showed up, you couldn't give it to Boeing.
Could we pay?
However, I'm sorry, the Senate took that language out, so there's some uncertainty there. However, I know other counties are talking about ways they might get around that. They believe that politically, if we pick winners and losers or try to select one business to give an ad valorem tax break to, it could upset the legislature. And as we all know, this money, although we're told that you'll receive an allocation of $63 million, it's dependent on continual appropriations from the legislature every year. So keeping the legislature satisfied, abiding by their priorities and the language that they craft is essential. The Triumph Board also, though, under the statute, has the discretion to set priorities and make awards that meet their priorities as well. It's meant to be a more nimble group that can respond to what's going on in the region and make decisions when the legislature is not in session, not able to.
But they're still bound by statute.
Still bound by statute. However, one thing, I know one proposal that's being talked about is whether or not you could set up districts where certain ad valorem tax reduction would be available to any business that located within that district. So there you haven't singled out a business, but maybe you've created an environment, some sort of commercial, industrial, technical park, where you're trying to attract a Boeing or a company, and you could say, you know what, we'd like to offer some ad valorem tax reduction to anyone who's willing to come locate in that park. To do that, Wakulla County or any county would have to probably say, we've identified an area of strategic importance, and what we'd like some discretion from Triumph. From our allocation, please set aside $2 million that we can utilize for ad valorem tax reduction in this area of strategic significance over the next 5 years, 10 years.
The question I got about the ad valorem tax reduction, in my mind, and I'm sure this is not the intent, but maybe you can clarify it. I ask a lot of questions, by the way. That's the way I learn about it. But if Gulf Triumph were to give Wakulla County $1 million a year for the next 15 years, theoretically we could reduce the millage rate by 1 mil in the next 15 years. Is that what this means? Is that what they're trying to encourage? Or it sounds like what you were saying is ad valorem tax reduction for certain people, not for all the people in the county. And for example, we could pay for the school board's capital outlay portion of the ad valorem taxes with Triumph money, then of course they could reduce that, and that would reduce ad valorem taxes. Is that not what that means? Or?
Well, I think, you go right back to it means what it says. And certainly under that theory, I think that Wakulla County could go to the Triumph Board and say, we want to reduce everybody's taxes a mil, or we want to pay this, you pay the school board's portion, and so we'd like to designate a portion of the funds attributable to us to carry forward that goal. Now, it's then up to the Triumph Board whether or not they believe that is a transformative use of the funds, whether or not they believe that use of the funds meets the criteria established by the legislature and the Triumph Board to accomplish the goals that they want to accomplish.
It's another example. At some point in the future, there's going to be a need to be a new high school built, and I assume that the school board is going to have a bond on it and ad valorem taxes. I mean, you can't. We wouldn't be reducing ad valorem taxes, but we would be not raising them to pay for that. And again, I know what it says, but it's just kind of tough to understand. Something like that would actually save people's tax money. They would have to pay for a new high school if Triumph. Just general thoughts. I'm just trying to understand what it means.
The understand this is, say for instance, and I'm sorry, Scott, say for instance, Randy, if you said, okay, we're going to reduce everything by a mil, what the Triumph Board would say is the way I understand it. They say, okay, show me every year how this is benefiting your economy. Is it adding to your GDP? Is it adding to your to the overall, what is it putting back into the economy? You'd have to prove that.
Yeah.
If not, those monies have to be, they're gonna want for callback. So that's the problem. Is that's not for saving taxpayers' dollars. It's for adding to the economy.
Well, I mean, it says reduce ad valorem tax rate reduction within the county, but you're saying you got to show a return on investment for
Yeah.
lowering a millage rate, and I don't see how you could ever show a
But
return
I
on
know it,
investment.
but I understand that, but we're getting bogged down in just one thing. This thing can be a whole lot bigger than just ad valorem taxes.
No, I understand.
Let's let this, I mean, that's a very small aggregate of it. Let's hear what,
The one criteria is that complicated. I can imagine the other ones are probably equally as complicated.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would go back to what David said. Remember the key words
Right.
that the Triumph Board is focusing on, and the reason that we originally were able to obtain this money for our region was to diversify our economy, so that if there was a future event like this occurred in the Gulf, that we weren't so dependent on tourism and our fishing industry for, maintaining our economy. And the other one was enhancement. And really, what the Triumph Board has picked up on is they want transformational projects. They want projects that are going to transform our economies into something that they aren't presently.
Does anybody have an example of a project that meets this criteria that the board has looked on favorably, or there's none out there yet?
There are none out there yet. We only have one pre-application filed so far.
And what is that for, if you don't mind me asking?
Randy, reducing ad valorem taxes doesn't benefit the community. It benefits the people who are paying the taxes.
Well, I was told
But-
earlier
and
that
then
the
it-
statement means what it says.
Yeah.
It says ad valorem tax rate reduction.
If I were voting for anything, it's for enhancement. That's going to go forward and whatever, but when you start using this money to reduce ad valorem taxes, you're just benefiting bad
Just
government.
making an example. I'm not saying I'm actually
Okay.
suggesting that, but I just want to understand it.
One more comment that plays off another example you brought, and that is we are, in addition to making sure that our legislators continue to appropriate this money, we need to keep pressure on our legislators, because what they've told us is these funds are not going to supplant monies that would ordinarily come to you. So you're not supposed to use this money to build a road that DOT was going to come in and should build anyway. So this is supposed to be lagniappe, a little something extra, because we were disproportionately affected by this spill, and because of the unique challenges of the Panhandle and the regional competition we face from Alabama and Georgia that other areas of the state don't face.
okay?
So I just want to make sure that does a project to move forward to Gulf Triumph, does it have to have our recommendation, or can they decide on a project and spend the money that's supposed to be coming to Wakulla County for this activity without any input from this board?
I will say this, that technically under the statute, they could make an award that impacts Wakulla County and satisfy the obligation to allocate funds to Wakulla County, whether or not the Board of County Commissioners agrees or recommends the project or not. I don't think it's likely that would happen. The board has expressed their strong desire to know what the local government authorities think of projects that come before them. And I think from their standpoint, if nothing else, to avoid disputes down the line, because disputes don't look good in Tallahassee, they want to make sure that they fill your allocation with projects that you agree with. So if you look at the Triumph application, anyone can apply for an award from Triumph. Any individual, business, private, public, school board, anybody can qualify to apply. However, there's a portion of the application that will say, does every governing body that exists within your jurisdiction approve? And you're supposed to attach a letter that says, yes, the county commission has approved the project.
Does it need to say, I'm sorry, does it need to say approve or does not oppose? Those are two totally different things.
The statute says recommend. Recommended.
And that's the way the application is worded. It says, does the county commission recommend this project?
So that means approve.
So you can recommend, I mean, some counties have said, well, why wouldn't we recommend every project? Or you can only recommend a few. It's completely up to you, but the discretion to spend the money or not lies with the Triumph Board.
Once it's recommended by us, it'll go through y'all's pre-screening process, and you'll immediately boot out the ones that don't meet these criteria, right?
The consultant.
Presumably so. What we're hoping is that the pre-application process will sort of intercept projects that don't qualify for some reason, and so those parties and entities don't spend a whole lot of time on a 20-page application. They get out very early with a 3-page application. And then the ones that kind of pass through that system, and we can't stop anybody from refiling, but if we say, yes, this meets the statutory criteria, meets a lot of our discretionary criteria, that project could move forward. Another aspect of that pre-application process that's important is the regional cooperation and collaboration. Stan Connolly, who's the president, CEO of Gulf Power, said at the last Triumph Board meeting, he really sees a big part of the pre-application process to be matchmaking. You know, if we get a great project in from Wakulla County and we get a similar project in from Gulf County, perhaps those two counties can work together on that project, and we can put them together to try to come up with something that may have a bigger economic impact or find some economies of scale rather than doing independent projects. Another thing that I'll mention to you, I was at a meeting last week where Mr. Connolly spoke, and an individual in Escambia stood up and said, well, so, you know, the first 40% is guaranteed to the counties, and we got to fight for the rest of it. And that was such a thing. We're going to be fighting for the rest of that money. And I really sort of caution you, and it would caution them in the room, if that's your attitude, it's the wrong attitude to go to the Triumph Board with. Mm-hmm. They don't want to see Wakulla County and Gulf County fighting. They don't want to see Escambia County and Okaloosa County fighting. They want to see the counties working together to try to come up with projects that can impact the whole region, or at least complement each other throughout the region.
So if a project is submitted to us from another local government, if we see that it maybe doesn't meet the criteria, I mean, are we supposed to have discretion there to say, you know, we're not recommending this because we don't think it fits, and you know, or is it? I'm trying to figure out if we're just a pass-through for those projects.
I just do a pass-through.
And your consultant is going to figure that out.
The thing in my mind, Ralph, would be to recommend every one of them and let them do the dirty work.
Well, two sides to that, and from a legal perspective, there's nothing wrong with that strategy. Recommend everything and let the Triumph Board move on. One thing Senator Don Gates said at the last Triumph Board meeting, when I sort of pointed out the specific language of the statute, said all the counties have to do is recommend. The counties don't set priorities, you set priorities. Chairman Gates was quick to correct me and say, no, young man, I want to know what the counties want. And so I hope the counties are giving me a list of their most urgent projects so that we can try to be responsive to these counties and try to find projects that are meaningful. You know, because if there are some projects you feel real strongly about, you need to let the board know that. And I'd let them know in writing, and I'd let them know at their meetings. You've got a great opportunity with this one of the first real meaty meetings coming up. That didn't sound right, meaty meetings, but real tangible, important meetings coming up in your community. And I encourage you to come out, show up, and if you feel passionate about a project, let the board know. Let Jason know. Jason is from Gulf County, but remember, Jason represents the whole region. All of the Triumph Board members, none are specific to you. They're all appointed to represent all 8 counties. Some counties don't have a board member. So I think one county has 2 board members. So you have to remember that these board members are going to be looking at all these projects and trying to make decisions that are best for the region. And fortunately for the smaller counties, you've got to guarantee that you'll be allocated part of this money. But you do need to act diligently and let them know what you want.
Randy, we're always voting on things. So if a project comes in that basically, just like any other vote, that we don't think will carry today, it's our position to not recommend it.
Certainly our prerogative to do that.
Yeah,
I agree with you 100%.
Everything we do is a vote on, it's sort of like anything we vote on, half the people probably don't like it, especially the person who presented it to us. So that's just what we do.
Well, and also keep in mind is like you said, is, you know, you guys there, I think the board, the Gulf Triumph Board is is looking for the vision for Wakulla County to come across in the projects that you're recommending. Now, understand, this is over a 15-year period, so you don't have to recommend every project this year. You could, or this cycle, you could say, okay, we're going to put these in and then next, because if you go back to everything that I presented to you guys on Restore and Gulf Triumph, and not Gulf Triumph, Gulf Consortium, and now Triumph, even the big spreadsheet we created that had all the different fundings in it based on projects. If you look at that, that is our overall master plan, other than what the school board had put in. If you go back and look at that spreadsheet and those meetings, that gives you an overall vision of building the county from an economic standpoint. What is the economic important things? And that's the way we should be making those decisions, is based upon what is our priorities for the county. And is it human capital to start off with, meaning your school and tech stuff with the school? Is it water and sewer projects? Is it, what is that? And that's something that we're going to work with you guys on to I think that would be the safe way to go instead of just recommending everything.
For example, the water and sewer projects, Triumph will only supplement funding that we
Well,
get from somebody else.
I know, but we're not getting there yet. What we're saying is let's just set our
I'm just
priorities.
desperate to hear an
Yeah.
example of a project. I
Right,
still haven't
and-
heard anybody tell me example of a project.
Well, we're
Well,
going to
meet.
show
Almost
you.
at day one, though. I mean, we're barely out of the gate.
Yeah, we're barely out of the gate, and we're not to the end yet. We got to take it step by
At least see
step.
the track if we're going to go to the gate. At some point in this meeting, somebody
You're
tell me
going to the
an
gate
example
at the end of this
a
meeting,
project
yes.
that
We're
would
going
meet
to, well, and just to give you a
criteria,
couple of projects we're going to be putting in the library.
that would meet all these
We're-
criteria.
Well,
Or
meet
one
some
of
of them.
Okay.
And also our radio system, as well as there's a bunch of other projects. Tech school from the school board.
Good, good.
There's a whole list of projects
Thank you for
in your
telling me at
stuff.
least one project.
You've got a whole list of them here.
But there's
So-
$15 million sitting there right now that's already been awarded as earmarked for Wakulla County.
Right. So what we would say is, let's look at and realize this is a marathon. This isn't he who gets the right out of the gates. You don't have to win the game right out of the gates. We can just strategically march through this thing, and as I said, this 15, probably even 20 years, 25 years at the end of the day.
Could be. Can I make
Could
one more
be.
comment? And
Yeah.
you correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Schoaf, but I believe, my sense from the Triumph Board is one thing that they are very interested in doing is leveraging this money up.
Mm-hmm.
So they really want to see this $15 million in Wakulla County turn into 45 or 60 million. So if they'll be looking for that, they'll be looking for projects that, there's a private side to this in the capital stack. Private money's coming in, some public money's coming in, and that Triumph money is coming in at the end to push it over the top. So that $1 million of Triumph money helped a $15 million project get over the hump. And so I'd also encourage you that what's going to be attractive to the Triumph Board, I think, is really leveraging that money, because they want to turn that $1.5 billion into $100 billion or more, particularly if we get into infrastructure projects and President Trump's infrastructure priorities. If we're able to provide some seed matching money to get federal infrastructure dollars down into the Gulf Coast, we're one of the few regions in the country that will have cash on hand ready to put that first money in for a federal grant to come on top of it.
And one thing I'd like to stress, and you're probably not the right person to stress it to, but Wakulla County is different from Escambia County, or, we don't have ports, we don't have airports, we don't have big industrial, we're never going to attract the Boeing. We're a nature-based bedroom community. And that's my thing I'm struggling with, is how is this going to benefit our county, which is small. It's very similar to Franklin County. Bay County at least has St. Joe with the port, but it's hard. Gulf. Sorry, it's hard to apply the same criteria to a big county around Pensacola as it is to us. We're not going to attract large businesses. I had thought the biggest thing for us for economic development is that road out there. I don't know if y'all came down it, but it's 2-lane. DOT is scheduled to 4-lane it, and I was asking if we could use Triumph money to supplement DOT funds to go ahead and get the project pushed through, maybe right-of-way acquisition, and I was told no, Triumph funds can't be used for that.
I'm not going to give you an opinion on that.
I think the good news
Lawyer,
is we're earmarked $60 million over the life of this. And we don't have to compete with those other counties. So all we're doing is competing with the statute. As long as we can show that we're meeting the statutory requirement and hopefully leveraging those funds, then, I mean, I don't know how the board's gonna select that, but.
And there could be, and you're right, and there could also in the future be tweaks to legislative tweaks to this, that all of a sudden they say, okay, we've got 4 years into it. Here's what we're looking at. We need to tweak it a little bit because we've got Wakulla County and Franklin County. They can't spend any of the money.
If you take Wakulla, going on what Randy said, we have two industries, retail and fisheries, and tourists are,
Beekeeping.
and tourism. We have no manufacturing. We don't have a skilled workforce that could do manufacturing. 60% or 70% of our people work in government jobs in Tallahassee. Now, if we could get some money to help them, whatever, but that's so that's where we stand. It's hard to find projects that we can. The thing that I would be interested in is that we don't do the baseball field hoping that they will come. You know, that's where the danger is in our position, is that we put forth things that are based on something else happening that's not happening today. We build the field and they will come. Well, a lot of places have built the field and they didn't come, and that's not how I feel we should spend that money.
Yeah, we have a lot of basically tourism and those type of activities that we could expand and provide a better experience here, and this is money that we could do that.
Well, we gotta show return on investment too.
Well, if we can, you know, there's a lot of businesses we could build that would show a return on investment.
So,
I don't think we'll have any trouble spending the money.
It's not like CDBG money where we can say, you know, CDBG money is easy to spend. You know, we can find something to spend that on that meets their criteria. This seems a lot tougher.
don't get hung up with that. We're getting hung up.
Let's wait till we get turned down
Be patient.
before we worry about if we're gonna get one done.
Be patient.
I need to know.
No, you're gonna find out, Randy. I mean, we're just going out the gate, so we're gonna have to. I'm interested though what Chuck, the question Chuck had, that bothers me a little bit. I didn't realize that it sounds like the legislature can just arbitrarily spend our money on a project that they think is beneficial to us in the region and us not have any say, and then they say, well, you got your money, Wakulla. That seems to bother me a little bit. Not that I can do anything about it, but sounds frustrating.
Not the legislature, but the Triumph Board, theoretically, yes, could.
And that could be, but that could be being manipulated by legislators, albeit, you know, that's what happens with politics, and then those people are appointed, and all of a sudden now our money's gone, and we don't have a lot. I mean, that could happen.
I mean, my biggest fear as a constituent, and I know this is a fear that some people on the board have as well, is that if we aren't good stewards of this money and we don't get this money into play quickly, then this is going to be a pot that if you have a bad hurricane event like Irma in South Florida, that the rest of the state is going to say, you know what, we've all been disproportionately affected by something, and start clawing that money back. So
This money gets sucked up into the Everglades and go just like that.
correct.
4-lane highways or escape routes or what. I mean, it could be any number of things. I think we got to be smart and move. I agree with David. We're just getting out of the gate, but we got to be early in getting out of the gate, getting our projects in, so that they know. Look, Wakulla's trying to get some money. And for me, this is something that impacted the Gulf Coast. I'm interested in things that are going to fix environmental issues, sewer, water, infrastructure projects that are going to heal that kind of stuff in the county, rather than building business. But I would go along with anything that's going to help the county or the region. But
those infrastructure projects are clearly within the list of acceptable awards to be made.
and I think it impacts how.
I agree with you 100%. We'll try and fund them 100% though. Or you gotta have public, private money into it also.
Can I rephrase your question? Could Triumph fund it 100%? Yes. Would they do it? I just don't know. I think it depends on the project. I think it depends on whether or not they think that there's a need for it, so that it's not a build it and they will come. You know, I think there's there's too much uncertainty there for me to give you an
If
opinion.
we can get a
one way or the
$10
other.
million project, Randy, and we have to ante up $1 million wherever we get that, I'm gonna
agree with you
push that all day
100%.
long, so.
100%. But
And if
Don't know.
if you go back and look at the spreadsheet, we've matched up a lot of that. Every Gulf Triumph project is a match to another project. It's not full-on, other than the,
Now, you've
The,
matched the
other-
Triumph money with some of our sewer and
yeah,
water.
with sewer, and a bunch of
Legislative
other money, legislative appropriations, et cetera. But, you know, the only one that we've got outright, and this is, Scott, I don't know if you know about this, is our radio system. We even have a countywide radio system. Replacing that is we went to the legislature, and they said this governor's office vetoed it and said, go talk to the Gulf Triumph Board.
and that's one
So,
of
the Gulf,
and
that's right, it fits in there. So now we're like, all right, the legislature said no. It says, you guys.
and that directly fits criteria D, which
That's
is
right. So,
local government for
that's right. But anyway, you'll hear from, I think you'll, not to be what y'all were talking about earlier, but one of our biggest infrastructure is sewer and water, but also is our human capital. And I think you'll hear Sonny and Bobby talk about that. And that's one of the biggest things coming out of the gates that we're wanting to really help the
There seems
school
to be a
board
lot of
pursue.
emphasis in this criteria on education and school.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that human
Workforce
capital is
training.
going to what Jerry's saying about a trained workforce. We got to start, and this is be a good start for us.
That may be the best.
So that's going to segue into, Sonny.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ms. Chansey, who's probably one of the smartest people I know, is handing you a copy of our two proposals that we're going to be bringing to the Triumph Board. They're actually, we're labeling them in two phases, but they're just basically two separate projects. And the word transformational is what we hung on our hat on when we started looking at the Triumph money and began to develop ideas on what we could do to support the continued progress of our school system in regards to providing opportunities for our students to be prepared for life after high school. So the first project that I'll have you look at is the one that deals with career and technical. That career and technical project would be, what it would entail would be moving our bus garage that is currently located directly behind Wakulla High School off campus. Now, this has been a recommendation by DOE for many years for lots of really good reasons. We don't really like having oil tanks right there on campus, and especially with Homeland Security, they have advised us to try and move them off. So we've had that on our work plan for a while. We want to relocate that on 42 acres, using up 10 of those acres directly next to Crawfordville Elementary, but closer to the east on that side of that property. That centrally locates that. But the main reason for doing that is so that we can begin a career and technical center centered around the old bus garage. As many of you may know, and if you don't know, we have an automotive program that's currently housed at the old Superlube north of Crawfordville. And that's been a great program. We brought that on in 2013. In the spring of 2013, we began that, and it's got a waiting list for kids, and we're putting kids to work through that program. We want to move that on campus for a lot of good reasons. So we would locate that. That would be the beginning of our VOTEC Center at Wakulla High School. You have to realize that our vocational and technical programs have been revived and rebooted at Wakulla High after we abandoned them in the 1990s. Everybody was going to go to college in the 90s. Do y'all remember that time? Commissioner Stewart, you were working there when we were all going to go to college. And we got rid of traditional vocational and technical, and so we repurposed those locations there on site to house kids for academics, and primarily focus then in regards to career and technical on those types of programs that had to do with the tech world at that time, because this was during the tech boom. Well, the downturn kind of pointed out to everybody that not everyone's going to be a technician, and when people stopped buying cars and needed to get them fixed, so it kind of came around. We also have added welding back on site. We had lost that. We brought that on site. We've got a waiting list there. One of our students that graduated while at Wakulla High School got his full certification, which is rare because typically our programs are designed to move on to Lively, in a partnership with Lively, to finish their last semester or year. They get so many hours with us. This young man was able to complete his program. He's making six figures. He's only 19 years old. He's working down in the islands right now welding after the storm, and he's doing really well. So we've done some things to promote that and give our kids some options. And we've got waiting lists on these programs. So that Botech Center that we're talking about is something that we think is important. So when we renovate that bus garage, it will have the ability to house our automotive shop, and also we will bring on probably HVAC. If you look at the numbers on HVAC makes the most sense. There are more jobs available, and the starting salary is significant for the cost for us to maintain it and run it. One thing I do want to point out to you, that everything that we do here, I want you to think of it as viewing as startup money to continue our programs. Actually, once these programs are in place, they pay for themselves with student FTE. So there's no need for Triumph dollars to actually run these programs. It's just the startup money to take care of the facilities. But the beginning of that phase one project there would be to move our bus garage off-site, build it here at Crawfordville, and then renovate that one. That's phase one, and that would be the beginning of a Votech Center. And eventually our plans would be to add on to that and move more of our stuff that's in the building, like our CNA program and our LPN certification program and some of our engineering programs, out into a Votech Center located behind the school. We like that because we have it on site, but we already have an avenue to move people onto that site, through the campus, and back around back with additional parking behind it. So it makes it accessible also to the general public. And there's some more, I'll give you some more explanation on that. Phase two would be to expand our post-secondary program. Currently at Wakulla High School, we have maxed out on the opportunity for our students to take dual enrollment courses. We're at about 30 hours, and in the last 30, 60 for graduation, they typically do off-site on campus. So there's a good reason for that. Part of a dual enrollment program is that students experience a campus setting, and the high school is not a post-secondary campus setting. This proposal in phase two would be to build a structure that would be a post-secondary center in a partnership with TCC, where our students would graduate from Tallahassee Community College, but it would be on-site at the Wakulla County campus at Wakulla High School. And this would provide that opportunity for our students to experience a college campus, because it would be built in that particular way. And you can see the particulars on that plan in there. There's more in there, and I'll answer any questions you might have when you look at it. The beauty of this program is that this gives all of our kids the opportunity to get an AA degree. Right now, we have a discriminatory situation with our students in regards to AA degrees, and that is this, that our students can be taken halfway there, and then those that can provide transportation and have the wherewithal and the means to can travel to TCC to complete their AA degree before they graduate. And just so you know, last year there were 12 graduates in Gadsden County, Leon County, and Wakulla County with their AA degree before they graduated from high school. 2 in Leon County, 1 in Gadsden County, and 9 in Wakulla. Now in 2012 we had 0. We've really worked hard on ramping up our opportunities with dual enrollment. And whether you agree with that or don't, the main thing that we're looking at is what that provides to our constituents here in Wakulla County, because what it does is it provides a free 2-year, 60-hour degree to their students and their children. And if we do it on-site, we make it available to every child without any problem. So that's our key ingredient there. Now we see this progressing into a regional center that would be available to Franklin County, possibly students that live in the Waukena-Wassissa area of Jefferson County that might come into our campus and take these courses during the day. That's fine too. And at night, it could be available to the general public in Wakulla County for night classes. TCC has done a little bit. They've played with that down here, but they've never really gone in. We feel like if we take charge here, we bring it home and create a regional community college setting on site where our kids graduate and don't have to drive to Tallahassee. We believe it'll be a benefit not only to our kids but to the region. So that's kind of where we're at on these two projects. There are more particulars in there, and if you have any questions, we're available to answer.
Excellent project.
I think your VOTEC, I would support that, and if you wanted to double it, I'd support that, and if you quadruple it, I'd support that. That is, I have always said that we're educating 1 out of 10 people and spending 9 out of $10 on that one person in the general university system. We have to spend more money on VOTEC. We got so many people that are dropping through the holes because they don't have a VOTEC degree. They can't. But most of your VOTEC people today are making more than the 4-year degree people. They are, and we're just leaving them out there. And I support you on that. My wife was on the school board 8 years in Atlanta, and I kept drilling her. Quit spending so much money getting these kids into college. Build these VOTEC schools, and let's get those people out there because we need their help.
Sure.
I just paid almost $500 to get a water line, not a water line, but an ice maker line put in my house because of the lack of competition. But really, both of those programs are really good for Wakulla.
Yeah, the only complaint I would have, Bobby, is spend some more money like this.
Well, and if you can see in there, our proposal right now is just shy of $9 million. That's what the two projects would be funded at. Just shy of $9 million would be what that would be.
Mr. Pierce, I'd like you pointed out the fact that this is just startup cost, and then it's self-sustainable with FTEs after that. I'm wondering from a board standpoint, is he able to capture that anticipated expense as part of the overall project cost and project that out, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, and show that he's only seeking the startup money? And I'm sure the startup money is a small portion of what the cost is going to be when we factor in future years. Can that be part of his submission? I'm looking at the pre-screening form, and ask about, are you seeking 100%? Are you looking for county money? Well, he's going to be utilizing county money. So can all that be part of his application to kind of sweeten the pot a little bit that he just needs startup money?
Well, I think if you look at, first of all, one of the discretionary priorities of the board is that projects be sustainable, self-sustaining for a long period of time. So that is going to weigh heavily in your favor, I think, for the project as described here currently. The other metric that I'd point you to is that in the statute it talks about how projects are going to be evaluated using economic input and output analysis and non-traditional models. So from a modeling standpoint, you really need to talk to some economists from GCC or FSU or UWF or somewhere to help you capture all those costs and put those into your application to show the board how this is going to have an impact on the economy. But just listening to the presentation, you can hear the other priorities that come out. It would appear to me that this project has a high likelihood of increasing the household income in the region through education in these projects. So there's a lot of great stuff that I'm hearing in here that I know the board wants to hear. The hard part is capturing all that in a persuasive way in your application. And
Is that $9 million of our 15? Are we?
Well, it could be.
It could be, yes, sir.
There's
Could
some
be.
discretionary. Also, the Gulf Triumph Board has some.
Well, and we need to be clear that it's not our 15. It's
That's right.
15 allocated to
It's
the
the
county.
county.
Well,
To
that's what-
everybody.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
That's
And-
only the first year, too.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that and I may be wrong, I may misstep. I think we have to be careful because I do believe after going to the meetings, we've been to almost every Gulf Triumph meeting. It's pretty clear the only way Boeing's going to get anything in Walton County is maybe a road to the Boeing plant. They're not going to get dollars to help Boeing, but they would get a road to the Boeing plant to get people there to work. I think the biggest thing we need to be focused on is that $15 million has been allocated, but it doesn't mean it all gets awarded. I think that's important to remember. It doesn't mean that it all gets awarded just because it's allocated. Am I right on that? Okay, so...
Well,
This could be
and-
phased over a couple of years, too.
Well, initially, what we would do, if we can begin with these projects, and they're shovel ready, we're ready to go. I mean, as soon as if we get approval, We can have the architects will be ready to go, and we're not going to spend our money on architectural design until we're approved. But we're ready to go. We're talking about, breaking ground next fall. The beauty for us is this doesn't have any impact on school operation because we build a bus garage, move the bus garage, renovate, open up, build behind the school. It's not like we're tearing down Wakulla High School to do this. But I think you're right. Long term, we want to be a regional community college center and VOTEC center for the coast. I envision it being the Ochlockonee Bay, whatever, and making that available to not just Wakulla County residents, but to those people that are in proximity in other counties. Franklin County is in a really tough spot. Franklin County, their service area is with Gulf Coast Community College. That's an easy thing to overcome to allow them to come into the TCC service area. It just requires a signature. But the other thing that happened that's really important to note is open enrollment across district lines. I'm not doing this to recruit students from Franklin County, but if we have capacity, we have room for students, and they want to enroll in Wakulla High School so they can get an AA degree, they can do that. State law allows it. If they want to enroll at Wakulla High School so they can get a certification in welding and move on to Lively with 6 months left, they can do that under state law. So this would not only just be helpful to our students, but if we do it right and do it appropriately, we'll support our sister communities around us.
Do you get their allocation, Bobby, from the state if they...
No, we're not asking for those because there's no promise that they're going to come.
No, but I'm saying, if a kid from Franklin County...
Oh, yeah, the FTE is FTE, yes, sir. We get that student dollars to operate. So once again, I spoke over in Calhoun County at the Economic Development Conference deal, and our biggest problem, and this is not just Wakulla County, for every small school district, is we don't have startup funds. And we're probably one of the only school districts in the state of Florida that actually has money, a significant amount, that is not federal or state dollars, because you can't use federal or state dollars to match. But we have Gulf settlement money that our board 3 years ago has put in a line item that we haven't spent. It's for ad valorem tax base, and so it's capital outlay. So we've got about $750,000 that we can access if we have to. So if the Gulf Triumph says we're only going to fund a percentage of this project, we've got some money we can put into it. If they come to us and say, we don't like the idea that you're moving your bus garage and using Gulf Triumph dollars to do that, that's necessary for us to do what we want to do, but we've got some money to supplement that. And that's because our board made a good decision 3 years ago. So no one else is in that position. I would tell you if you go down to Franklin County, they got $150,000, try and find it. Try and find it. So with that being said, that's our proposal. We hope that it's something that you can get behind and support. Our whole goal here is to increase the services we provide the clientele that you represent every day. There are our clientele too, but that's the partnership we have with the county commission. There's a river that runs between us, and we never cross it unless we bring you a referendum. But we both serve the public trust, and we're trying to do the right thing for our citizens, and this is an opportunity for us to partner through this Triumph dollars to do just that. And I promise you that it will be efficiently operated, and the money will be used for what it's intended to, and we'll take care of kids a little bit better than we currently are, and we're doing a pretty good job right now, and we appreciate your support.
You're planning on having this Tallahassee Community College Higher Learning Center on
campus, yes, sir. Yeah, be on campus. We've got 7 acres we're not even tapping into on this project behind us that we already own, but we've got the acreage already there in place to do what we want to do. We have to do a little bit of reconfiguration of some holding ponds, but water retention areas, but very doable with what we've got.
So would you imagine people that are already graduated high school coming to this facility also?
They might, yes, sir, during certain times of the day, definitely at night.
Yep.
Are you able to take the technical people, let's just say a plumber, you give him a schooling at your facility?
Let me answer that where I think you're going. Right now, our programs, our kids will move on to TCC to complete their certification if they don't complete it. But my vision is to one day at the VOTEC Center at Wakulla High School to specialize in solar or alternative power, and that we enter into an agreement with the company so that we automatically have apprenticeships for those students that meet the criteria. That's what we're shooting for. Those are the kind of programs we want to develop, but I see that with alternative energy, and that's where we're headed. In fact, that we've already put that on our state docket with the DOE. We have to go ahead and line up where we're headed out front, and that's something we want to do, and that would be another phase that might come forward with additional funds in another year. We'll be asked to add on to our VOTEC Center, expand to bring that type of a program on, and create an apprenticeship. But yes, that's where we believe that's the solution. We believe that's the answer.
I don't know how you do it, but I know that most of these technical jobs require 3 or 4 years of apprenticeship before they can get their license.
Right.
So as important as what you're doing for them is for them to be able to tie them.
All of the air conditioning guys that work down here have already told me, and we've had, just so you know, we've had an advertisement for 2 years for an AC guy. We just don't pay good enough. But we believe an HVAC program is our next step, and all of these guys have told me, if you can get these kids ready, we'll hire them, and we'll put them on and do an apprenticeship with them. So we agree. I agree. My vision is your vision for where we need to go with our VOTEC, and we think those kind of business partnerships are where we're going to head. But I'm really encouraged about some things that are happening out west and in the Midwest with alternative, and you've seen what's happening out at the airport. All of that tells me that that's where we're headed, and we need to go ahead and produce a workforce that's ready to go out, because I think it's only going to pick up speed with wind turbine and solar. And so eventually that's something that we're going to do. I'm hopeful. Maybe during my time, maybe after someone else gets it, but we're going to lay the groundwork to get there. So there you go.
You have TCC on board already?
We do.
And are they bringing any matching funds?
No, TCC's only going to be in it as our support. We've got to have that TCC agreement, but again, they won't give us any dollars for, no.
They have plenty of places to...
They're not going to give us any. In fact, I think, I don't even know if they're probably going to submit something for the environmental center. So when we got them, they said they agreed on what we were doing based on principle, and they wanted to be a support to it, but they had reservations, and we know why, because we're competing for the same $15 million.
Do they pull any FTE money, or is there any...
The way that we would structure this, they would get some funds, but they would not get our FTE. We would not lose significant amount to run it, and we would be in charge of the school. We would run the school, we would put the people in place. They would assist us on bringing people in that could teach college courses, but we've already got a significant number that are already certified to do that. Like I said, we can provide almost 36 hours on site. That's a combination of actual physical professors on site, virtual, and distance. But with this, we'd be expanding that by another 30 hours. And like I said, right now, you know, the one thing that I can tell you is that we've moved from, when were we at about 78% on graduation rate?
Yes, district-wide 78%.
That was last year. We're at 89 this year. We anticipate that going up. I attribute a lot of that, in fact, a significant amount of that, to our VOTEC expansion, and also the opportunity for kids to get their AA degree.
So that's 89% of our high school seniors are graduating.
That's correct. And what you need to understand is I can give you a website and you can go see people claiming that they got 98 and 94 and 96, but that's not accurate. Just so you'll know. Because if we want to get that, in Wakulla County, then every child that leaves us, what we do is we code them leaving the state. And you say to yourself, well, how can you do that if they don't tell you? Well, they might. They might leave the state.
Could leave, right?
Could leave.
Yeah.
So if you code them that way, they don't count towards your graduation rate. So when you see anybody above 90, unless there's a couple, I would tell you that be skeptical. But here we're honest about it. We're keeping it straight down, bare to the board on that. So that's our focus. We think it does keep kids in school. We also think it significantly reduces our achievement gap by having those kids hooked and in place and working hard. We don't have significant issues with the achievement gap here in Wakulla County, and there's a lot of good reasons for that too. But we hope you can get behind this. And if you have any questions that don't get answered here today, feel free to call us, because I've got really smart people I work with that can answer them better than I can.
Very good.
Good to me.
Okay.
Seems like something that's kind of a no-brainer. If all we got to do is give a recommendation.
Well, we tell ourselves that because we really hope that this will fly, and we really want to see it happen for our kids. But the reality of it is that I really think if you look at the spirit of what I've heard out of the Triumph Board and what I'm hearing Don Gates say, and Don Gates is driving the boat, it's re-education and transformation. Re-education and transformation. That's what they're preaching.
You gotta take care of those. You gotta take care of those kids that are not going to college. I came from a small town in the mountains, and I just noticed that my county is in the top 5% of kids on drugs in the nation.
Yeah.
And there's not even a freeway going through there. It's on the way to nowhere. But
Well, we have a lot to be thankful for here in Wakulla County. We've got a really good situation when it comes to education and when it comes to location and all of that. And I'm with Commissioner Merritt. We are a bedroom community. The sooner we accept that and embrace it, the better off we'll be, because we can become a great, fantastic destination as a bedroom community. We can do that, but that's what we are. I mean, the only legal crop we grow anymore is hay. Y'all understand that? It's, you got a few people growing corn for their horses and cows and maybe a dove field, but, when I was in school here, we grew peanuts. I mean, my wife's grandfather was a farmer. We're a bedroom community of Leon County. The people that work here are commuting, or they're going to provide services. We've got a little bit of an eco-tourism deal, and we can exploit that to some degree, but it's limited. The sooner we plan for good development in our community and understand what we are, we'll become a destination. We already are, just for location and for lifestyle. And then we'll keep working hard on our end to provide a quality education for the kids that come here to live. So that's it. This would go a long way towards moving us forward. I would tell you that we would be doing something that not another school district of similar size has done. In fact, these colleges on campus, there are only a few around the state: Miami-Dade, Polk County, Sarasota. Very few of these opportunities around the state. For a small district to do this opportunity comes around once in a lifetime.
if you have a good school system, you can't keep the people from coming to Wakulla.
Yes, sir.
Really.
Yeah.
If you got a bad school system, there's nothing you can do to have them come to the county.
Right.
But as long as our school system is top, then there's not much we can do to keep people from.
No, we realize we have a great responsibility.
Bobby, is it still the case that a university has to accept the transfer of AA?
That is correct.
Back when I was in school,
State University.
you either apply to Florida State, or if you had an AA, they had to let you in.
Yes, sir. You may not get into the College of Broadcasting,
Right.
but you will be accepted.
And I think on your thing about equality, I think that goes a long ways towards that too, because that, if you're not in the best circumstances, don't have the best GPA or whatever, if you got AA, if
Yes,
you want
sir.
to go to Florida State, you can go there.
I can tell you, for us, we know that within 10 years, the AA degrees will be on high school campuses. That's coming. And a master's degree will be the equivalent of a bachelor's. It pretty much is that way now. So if we can get ahead of the curve by doing this and providing this opportunity for our kids, I think it only makes it better for Wakulla County long term.
Good project.
Yep. So they're
Really good project.
That's it. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir.
That was, as I said, human capital is our number one challenge now in our county. And this is something that if in the future, if we were to able to do something with Opportunity Park and any type of industrial, it sure makes a difference whenever we have a vocational school. We can provide you with 6 welders a year, 6 HVAC folks a year, whatever that is. So that's a great thing for our county. With that, Sheree has a couple other. Yeah, sorry about that. I'll make an announcement. Bob wasn't able to be here from WIA. And they're planning on submitting a project for a marine manufacturing trade training center. That'll be a conference center, I'm reading from here, a manufacturing center, an oyster seed place they can grow the spat, as well as a commercial local seafood product house. So they're going to be requesting $15 million for that. That's Wakulla Environmental Institute.
Now, are we at some point going to be ranking these projects? Well,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
sounds like
Yes,
what you
that's
guys
that's the part of this process. This is a process.
in my mind,
This is the first of that.
school board project will be more important than that, and you know, I'm not adverse to that necessarily, but that's taking up everything. And I don't know how we can structure it where, you know, we're not adverse to this project, but we think that one's much more important.
Yeah, well, that's something, we'll be walking you guys through that process. So anyway.
Well,
I would announce
I'm
that.
not disputing or defending that project, but I think it would come about the numbers, the return on investment.
That's right.
The information that comes from the economist, so we can say, well, hey, this is the long-term benefit for the community. It's hard not to fall in love with that project, and it's real easy to see. He's going to create jobs right away. They're going to buy houses. They're going to pay taxes. But I think it all come about seeing the numbers so we can have a rational, you know, comparison and say, well, this is why I'm supporting this as
but
number
we'll-
one and this is number two.
Ralph, will we see the numbers before we have to make our recommendation?
I mean, I think we need to. If a ranking is expected, I think we need to see that, because if not, we're just falling in love with whoever
gotta-
sold a great project
I'm
to
just,
us.
who do we have to make those, number calculations?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because just because somebody brings us a project, they may not even be good at what they do.
Yeah.
You know, we got to make sure that they're good at what they do, and they're not floundering around looking for government money.
Yeah.
And that's,
Could it be a situation, David, where we, say there's 100 projects submitted, I have no idea. We say, you know, we don't have a problem with these 100 projects, but these are our priorities, number 1, 2, 3, or 4, and not rank every single one of them. You know, because who knows what South Childi's going to turn in, right, Laura?
Well, we heard all we have to do is give a recommendation, but they
That's
really
right.
want us to help.
That's right. So our thing is going to be is we will give you a list of projects. More than likely, there will be about 8 to 10 projects, and of those, we would don't want you to rank them. But my advice would be to only submit a certain amount at this point in time, and let's see how everything goes before you submit. I would break it down to 2 submittals. But there'll be some projects in here that may not, like I said, may not fit our plan at this point in time. There's some priorities that that you guys need to let the board know, the Gulf Triumph board know. You can't, if you recommend all of them, that means you're saying we're not, you know, you're going to put the lowest one is going to have the same weight as the top one. So that's the reason I'm saying we need to say, based on the dollars that we've got, we feel like these are our top 3 projects moving forward.
And I'd like some way, I was trying to get to earlier, if we give, let's just say the number's 15 million, because that's what we know we're going to get that, right?
Well, that's there now.
Okay. If we say, all right, we want this one project, it's going to take all $15 million, then the other 8 or 9, you know what I'm saying?
Have to wait till next year.
Well, what's the allocation next year?
15 million.
No.
Well, yeah.
3.
Yeah, 3.
Okay.
3. I'm sorry.
So
3 million.
if you have a big project,
Right.
it's going to be, this is your, you know, it's either have to be a time.
But it's going to be aggregated and rolled from year to year as well. So, like I say, y'all just we need to think about that as we're walking through this process, okay? It's all a process.
And we could split a project up into
Scott.
partial funding too, I'm
Yeah.
assuming. If
That's right.
just for example, if TCC asks for 15 million, we'll say, all right, we'll recommend 3 million a year for 5 years or whatever, just so there's money left over for Laura or Zoe.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for the board, but if you've been to a board meeting, in most instances, the board is not, I don't think they're looking to commit to your 15 million in year 1. So this first round of proposals, don't expect that you're going to walk away with $15 million.
And what's the matching on that $15 million? I mean, I assume there'll be some matching in there they're going for.
Well, it'll be according to what the project is.
But the board hasn't set a criteria. Like, I know when they first started talking a couple years ago, they were looking at a third Triumph, a third local, a third business, but there's no criteria along those lines now.
There's no set criteria. There have been preferences espoused by different board members. But remember, the next tranche of Triumph money will not come to Triumph Gulf Coast until 2019. So the $15 million that you have right now is all the money that we'll have for 2017, 2018 before any more money is allocated, and it's got to be appropriated by the legislature. You know, right now it's set up to automatically come, but they can step in and stop at any time. And I don't,
Retirement fund, for example, with it.
When somebody brings us a project, or when we have our own project and leveraging that money, they need to tell us how much skin they're going to put into the game. Like Bobby has 750,000, I think he said he had. So the more,
Well, and that's right, and you're right.
the more
You're
skin
exactly
they
right.
put in the game, and the better their project, the more likely that Triumph is going to accept that project.
Yeah, it takes skin in the game, that's for
Yeah.
sure. You got to put your
If you don't have
money at
any
risk.
skin in the game, you're just playing in left field.
So, let's get on to Ms. Zoe and City of St. Marks and those wonderful folks there. They want to tell you about a few of their projects that they're looking at.
I'm Mayor
Mayor
Gilman.
Gilman, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
You
That's
bet.
all right.
I know it, I was,
Commissioners.
Welcome.
That's Mayor Gilman and her administrative assistant.
Uh-huh.
exactly.
Zoe.
We have go ahead. We have 3 projects that we're
Zoe, yes.
submitting. This is the first one. It is a boardwalk along the St. Marks River. As you know, locally, we're a very small village, so to speak, and mainly our income comes from tourists and anything we can do to enhance that. And I will say this, sitting on the Tourist Development Commission for several years, as Mr. David knows, we just submitted something to the county to look at, and we're very surprised at the fact that when I was on there years ago, the budget was around $40,000. And this is bed and tax money, as you well know. It's now up to about $150,000, which is pretty good for a little community like us. And this is part of that community, and mainly, like I said, we promote tourists, and we would like to do this as a trailhead in St. Marks. The trail goes all the way to St. Marks and stops, and this would be a river walk right across the river, right along the edge of the river. And
Did you say a river walkway across the river?
No, this is along the river.
Along the
the
river,
river,
okay.
right. And it would be both bike and walk. And this would connect to the boat ramp and to the fort in St. Marks, which would bring in all of the history of St. Marks. It would take about 18 to 24 months to complete, as you see, and we do own the property. Actually, we lease the property from the state, and we do have the design and the permitting. And it would be a very short project, but it would enhance and help the economic growth of St. Marks.
Where would it run from? Chuck's place towards the fort?
No, right at the end of the bike trail, right there, and it would go all the way around to the fort.
Yeah, you have some of that
Gas
already.
terminal then, right? Isn't there a gas terminal there?
No, the gas tanks are taken out. They've been
On
out.
the river. where they
On the
used to-
river, that's the sewer plant. That's project
Well, I
number
thought there
3.
was an oil transfer pump thing.
No,
It's been taken out.
That's just recently been bought by a private citizen, all of that, and that'll be taken out.
Good.
Uh-huh. Do you have any questions about it?
So you're connecting to the existing boardwalk, is that the proposal?
We're connecting to the existing trail
Okay.
with a boardwalk.
There is a boardwalk there now.
Yes, and it's been there for a while, and it was supposed to connect with the boardwalk.
That's what I meant.
But now it's been there so long, it needs to be, I think the pylons, some of them might need be, they might be fine, but the boardwalk itself needs to be done, and it was just a short distance.
Yeah, just ask a funny question. Do you have, because this is, tourism is our business, and
Right.
the coast is a big
Right.
part of it. Do you have any money to put in with this? Do you?
The answer is no.
But they've spent some on permitting already.
Right, and design,
The
and the
land.
land. We have the design and the permitting and
But
the
this,
land.
this is something that with the money that we get, that we could use that over 2 or 3 years or so forth, so it could be funded
Sure.
I don't think so, because when it has to be built, it has to be totally completed.
It can't be done in sections.
Okay, because everybody's, everybody's gonna have a wish that their project is done,
Right.
and we got 15 million, whatever, so,
This is 900,000.
yeah, I know you don't want 15, right,
Right.
Yeah.
but, it's like,
It will bring in some revenue. People be visiting, they'll be eating at the restaurants, and also, people are starting to come in. We've had a couple new homes built, and then the private citizen that bought a lot of property there, he intends to put up some more buildings and some shops, like 4 to 6 shops.
Even with the new flood zone?
Beg your pardon?
Even with the new flood zone?
Yes. Yeah.
The warehouse there, and it's already there. So
I know you were
can do that.
concerned about that when FEMA changed.
you'll have a lot of people
I
with
think
with the new bike trail as it comes up 98. I
Right.
think that will quadruple the number of people
Right.
that visit you bike-wise, because there's gonna be I think a lot of people gonna start riding that bike trail.
Right, and we also have canoeing and kayaking,
Yeah.
and, people that come down for the whole day, and they have green guides that take people out.
Florida Trail
The
is right
Florida
there?
Trail,
Mhm.
In fact, I think some of the people at the lighthouse is working on putting a dock across the river, so when people walk the trail, they'll have a dock where somebody can go pick them up and bring them over.
We sat there and watched an old boy wait about 30 minutes for a boat to come get him, sitting around the other side of the river. 'Cause there's no way to get across the
Yelling
river.
and waving, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He could have swam across.
And
it.
y'all are matching this, right? Dollar for dollar?
No. We have no money.
I think Gail said no.
No. No.
Well, if you look at if you got creative on how you get the money,
Uh-huh.
you got
Right.
some at the end of one year and some at the beginning of the
Right.
next.
Well, we couldn't start
So-
the project until we got all the money,
How come?
because contractors want to get paid.
Yeah, but let's just say it's 900. We start out with 450 in December, and we fund another 450 in January.
If you can guarantee that, absolutely.
Well,
We can't guarantee anything.
You're-
We don't even get to decide.
but once you were approved, you could almost assume that would happen. The worst thing
Oh,
that could,
absolutely.
the worst thing that could happen is that you get an interruption in your project.
Yeah, I don't see that
Yeah.
happening.
But is there other funding sources? And I think that's gonna be one of the questions. Are there other funding sources that you're gonna look for?
Legislature, just where we
Right.
have to go, and we're gonna go there too. We have
Grant.
been there and have not gotten funded. It would make it through, the House and not make it through the Senate, and then back and forth. I am going to still apply with them, absolutely.
David, I have a question, and it's in this, is that if we recommend a project, if we send it on with recommendation, that does help the state to say that this project has been recommended, then maybe we should help with a grant or whatever to fund that project. Not guaranteed, of course, but,
We being the state, you mean?
pardon?
A grant or a...
The other way to do it is that we would have the seed money to match a grant from the state, and so that would be make it
Right.
a more,
That-
a
do we-
better able to get that money from the state,
Yeah.
which is the way to go.
That's what I'm saying.
And my other question would be, could you actually connect this up to the businesses along the boardwalk, and then the business, the Riverside Cafe and stuff, take the boardwalk all the way up to them, and then they would have some skin in this game too.
That would be great if we could do that,
So,
if we could get approval to do that.
well, I mean, if you talk with those landowners and
They would.
see if they're interested in making the connection, because it would be beneficial to them and put them in the game.
And I think with the capital city of the sea trail, the state just spent millions and millions of dollars on that. This would
Right.
be considered like a trailhead almost, end of trailhead.
That is wonderful, but we were not included. They did not come to St. Mark's.
They stopped at
They
98.
went on down 98.
But they're part of the system.
They stopped
Yeah,
it.
I mean, you
they
have the
stopped
bike
there.
trail that already terminates there, but
Uh-huh.
this could
It's
extend
got
it.
a big gap.
Yeah.
It can so far stop, and then they have a gap of 1,100 feet. and then it starts up again and goes to the fort. There's this huge gap there. And that's what we want to do, is put the boardwalk across.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the trail that's there now, the St. Mark's.
Absolutely.
And everybody,
Those people
yeah,
up there on that.
everybody likes to view the river, and it's preserving that,
Planters.
area.
They always
Right.
leave that 1,100 feet out.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm thinking again about how we start ranking these things and how we start making these projects look good in front of the board, but, you know, I think we've got to monetize what you've spent on design and permitting, the land cost,
Right.
anything that
No
you
right
can
away.
assign a dollar amount to, and even some projections of, you know, we've seen this many people come in on the trail, and projections of what it's going to do to tourism, because they're going to need some way to say, well, these are both great projects, but this project, they're only asking for 33%, and it's going to do this return on investment. You know, I think that's the challenge, is putting those projects in front of this board that's going to make one project look better than another.
Absolutely.
But they're going to, I know they're all in the infancy stages, but I suspect the Triumph Board's going to be pushed to get this money out into the economy. It's not doing anybody any good sitting in a bank somewhere.
Well,
So, you know,
You could create economy, and also with Bobby's students, they could come over, and it could be educational on fishing, they could, you know,
Right.
or right there on the St. Mark's River, and across the river.
That's the refuge
the
you're talking.
refuge.
Mhm.
I mean, there's just endless things that could happen in St. Mark's. We just need to get a big kickoff
We
here
get it.
and help us out.
And this,
Support us and make a recommendation. We would appreciate it.
so is this the only project? You said you have three,
no,
but this is-
I have, this second one ties in with the boardwalk, more or less. It's the ADA compliance canoe kayak launch.
Thank you.
And I think that's pretty
I
self-explanatory.
support anything to do with canoe and kayak.
Kayak, okay, okay. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
and cheap.
And cheap, yeah. Look at that. And the third one,
I thought you just had two.
no, I got three. But I'm just going to touch lightly on this one. This is the conversion of the grinders to gravity sewer. And we did have a survey taken, a study done on that. And
You want me to hand this down?
you can't, yeah, both of them. Both.
Tough with the groundwater level around there.
So does that include,
And I'm going to confess, I'm not an engineer. I understand it flows this way and it flows that way, but I just, this project is something else.
I like that kayak.
hot on the left, cold on the right?
I have trouble
Stuff
getting in
rolls
my
down
kayak.
here, all right.
Yeah.
You can dig a hole
They'll
in St. Mark's, you
flip
dig
over
down a
with
hole a foot, you hit water.
You water, yeah, that's it. You
So
don't
dig
even,
a 20-foot deep hole, you can have a 20-foot water.
yeah, that's right. And then you need pump. You need a pump.
Good.
And then when it rains hard, you've got problems. And
This is just for delivery to the waste treatment plant. This doesn't address dealing with the waste treatment plant itself?
no, this means we're trying to convert the grinders to gravity
Just collection.
sewage.
Just collection.
But it would
That's build
still,
the plant.
it'd still terminate in the plant. It would still wind up in the plant.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if you
But
could
it's,
pull that plan into it and work that into a state water project with Amendment 1 funds as well. You know,
we had a survey by Sterling Carroll, who's the state engineer with the Florida Rural Water Association, and it was very self-explanatory. I understood a lot more about, on page 3 here, he shows the gravity sewer system, and we have to go down, what, 15 feet? And you're gonna, what do you got, you're gonna have a lake down there.
That's why I said it'd be difficult. They did it in Panacea though. so-
well, then you'd have a pump station at the end of that
Correct.
15 feet.
Yeah.
pumping
That's
it back
right.
Yeah.
up.
Right now,
Yeah.
each house has their own pump station. St. Mark's maintain them, or yes, or no? Or the homeowner maintain them?
St. Mark's maintains them. And I don't believe that's so in
We quit doing that a
Top
few years ago, by
Choppy,
the
no?
way.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't think any other area, they individually maintain them. And that's probably why we have so many problems. Got any other questions?
I have to vote for these projects because 100 years ago, Zoe and I grew up in the same community in the mountains,
We sure did.
and we danced every Saturday night together.
Uh-oh.
And neither of you are the ones on
Something
drugs
going on
from your
here.
Paper ad, did you get that?
No, in
Wakulla News?
Okay, what you got?
I just want to thank you very much for giving Mary Gilman a chance to come and give you our projects in St. Mark's. And
Yeah.
please, if you can, find it that would qualify to support this and make a recommendation.
You need to
As
turn right
Commissioner-
around,
as
you know,
Commissioner
180,
Thomas
look,
said.
right behind you too.
As Commissioner
Oh,
Thomas
yeah,
said,
They
thank-
have my card.
Yeah, okay.
figure out all the money that you've spent and your projections and so forth, and that can be part of your skin in the game.
Mhm.
Can't say you make $10,000 an hour, but you know, you can, so.
Right. Okay.
We pay her well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got the city of Sopchoppy, the mayor sent me a note, a text to tell everybody she had to go pick her kid up.
I figured that's what
She says, hey, could you please let the commissioners know that the city of Sopchoppy will be bringing forth a couple of projects, but they are still in being determined, obviously, with the dynamics of the city of Sopchoppy. Our proposals will focus on downtown redevelopment, promotion of businesses, and tourism. So,
Ashley, do you have the project?
nope.
So there's no piece of paper,
Uh,
but it's forthcoming.
but it's forthcoming, but
Yes, sir.
that's, like I say, this is the first of many, many, many of these meetings to have.
Jessica,
So,
surely Laura didn't make that long text out while she was driving, right?
Okay.
Okay.
And all right, and our other project that we've gotten in, we've gotten in so far is Miss Dana Peck. You want to introduce your project, please, ma'am?
Now, David, you said there were 8 total. Is Miss Peck's one of those 8, and were these 3 part of that 8? Okay.
So we've heard.
It is, good to know. Wait a minute.
We received, Dana emailed me her project this morning,
Okay.
so we're just going with the flow today.
And while,
There's not a list of 50 projects in
No.
there. This is where we're at so
So far to date, you've seen every project.
and our deadline is the 15th, but
Right.
we have, the board is meeting here on the 8th, so these decisions will not be made when the board is here, correct?
No, we'll bring back an agenda item for the November 6th meeting to ratify and get whatever you want.
Yeah, between now and we're going to give you a final list and and you'll get that, and on the 6th, you need to decide what you want to rank and how you want to rank them.
Okay.
Can I make a quick comment on
Yes,
that?
sir, please.
Mr. Schultz made a comment, and that is this deadline is very much a consideration deadline, meaning that the board can't even consider something unless it has it before the meeting. But this is a rolling deadline, a rolling process. All this money is not going to be given out at the next meeting or at any meeting. The board is going to be pretty conservative in initial awards. They've said they want to hit some singles, hit some doubles, show some success, run some projects through the process, and see how it goes. So don't, you may, if your project isn't accepted in this first round, don't be afraid to resubmit. It's very much something Alan Ben said, last meeting, the bus will come back around. So you'll have an opportunity to resubmit
Right.
projects,
Oh,
you'll have
that's
an
okay,
opportunity to submit new projects.
Excellent.
Just because you're
Right.
not funded in round 1, doesn't mean that they don't like the project.
I get one of those, too.
Eligible for-
And that's the reason, if you go back to that spreadsheet I was telling you about that has the plan, you'll see 10 years from now, we're going back to the Gulf Consortium Board or Gulf Triumph for funding.
In other
So-
words, if first you don't succeed, try.
Well, and it's even that, it could be just stacking on to another project, so that's what I'm saying, you got long-term. This is long-term.
So you all can get rid of me if you just go ahead and approve this. I want to make something really clear. This is not Dana Peck's project. I wish I could come in costume. This is the project for the Wakulla Commercial Fishermen's Association. It is their project. I'm the one who can, I guess, type and talk, and I'm retired, so that's why I'm here. But this project, most of you probably know about oyster reef restoration, and this is a project to restore oyster reefs that are inshore and near shore on the Wakulla County coastline, and this would benefit commercial fisheries and recreational fisheries, but oh so much more. And these are hard acts to follow, but I made some notes here. If you have oyster reefs restored, you help build up a barrier to storm surge. We do have storm surge here, and a lot of people worry about it, and that is one of the major benefits. You slow down coastal erosion if you have oyster reef restoration or reef restoration. We have a regional impact with this too. Not only that, we're working in coordination with Franklin County on this, but somehow all those little oysters and fish and baby oysters just do not follow boundary lines or county lines. And this can affect not only Franklin and Wakulla County, but Jefferson County too, because it's a proposal from maybe as far as the Alcilla to the Ochlockonee Bay on the east side of the bay. And the proposal is, over a period of 5 years, is to restore 3 to 6 oyster reefs, depending on the type of, well, not the location, but the type of restoration that is most beneficial. To the fishermen's advantage, they have talked to Jim Estes, who's the Deputy Director of Fish and Wildlife, the Marine Fisheries Management, who would help locate which reefs are ideal, and that would determine the materials that would be used. We also have a supporter, Dr. Andrew Kane, who's with the University of Florida, IFAS, and also works with the Sea Grant organization, and that means there may be some leverage there for some other grant money. And Dr. Kane is a detailed person about what materials to use. And these materials can range from rock to fossilized oyster shells to living oyster shells. And that makes a great deal of difference in how much it's going to cost, you know, and how much area you can cover. I mentioned that we could probably leverage grants. I am not an expert on this. I'm not a fisher. I'm not any of those things, but I can read. And I have read many, many, many research projects that have conclusions that restoring oyster reefs is beneficial in every way. And can it be transformational? Here's the neat, this is what I like about this project the best. Not that I'm going to do it. The commercial fishermen, as you know, have had many whacks over the past couple of decades. And if they are involved in this project, if this project is considered and granted, first of all, it's not the old oyster relay group. Just want to make that really, really clear. This is the Wakulla Commercial Fishermen's Association today. If they get out there, we have talked with a monitoring firm, a laboratory that would monitor and analyze the effects that this reef restoration has. The fishermen then have a greater stake in good outcomes. And that doesn't go away after the reef is restored. That develops an appreciation for what you can do to benefit and sustain your profession. In addition to that, if more fish are produced here, we have more local seafood, and that is inherent pride in this county. And yes, it can draw tourists, that's wonderful, but it instills pride in the county, and that pride in the county can be reflected in many, 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 many ways down the road, in beneficial ways to the county. It will be monitored. Whatever is done will be monitored by a laboratory. That's in the works. I just got an email before I left to come here about giving a cost estimate on that. Over a period of 5 years, the reef restoration would cost an estimated $2.6 million, but if it's inshore or near shore, probably less than that, depending again on the acreage. So I can't be long-winded on this because I don't know enough, but I can see that it's an excellent project.
I think one of the, probably the industry biggest affected by the oil spill was oyster. And maybe not as a direct result of oil, but the state opened up the reefs to let anybody get any oyster they wanted, regardless of size, is my understanding. That was an indirect, directly affected the oyster industry. Was that one event just before the oil was supposed to get here, they cut everybody loose. And out, people came from out of, not from our county, but came over and took all the young oysters, and that's what really killed it. But it was because of the oil spill. Otherwise, they would have not been here to take those oysters.
Well, there are wild oysters there now, but they're in restricted waters. And before I came here, I looked up landings in oysters. In 2010, let me explain something. Franklin County's already restoring reefs. I mean, that's who they're working in conjunction with, just for ideas, methods, costs, things of that sort. Franklin County in 2010 had $5.7 million in income from wild oyster harvesting. This past year, they had 1.7. So you are talking about huge, tremendous reductions. Wakulla County has no wild oyster harvesting processing plant. So it's very hard to find out what the impact is on Wakulla County because they take their oysters to be processed in Franklin County. But in the year 2010, they had about $230,000 in income. So far in 2017, they have reported $0 in income.
So,
yeah.
are there any other funding sources that this money could match with to improve this?
There are, yes. I mean, there's a litany of people interested in oyster reef restoration. I talked to Betty Fugate with the Department of Environmental Protection in the Northwest District who does aquatic preserve reef restoration. She's the manager for that. And also Dr. Kane with the Sea Grant, the NERDA grants of the National Fish and Wildlife Association. I can't just rattle them off the top of my head, but there are other opportunities there.
So David, we can use this money for matching funds to get those other grants?
This would be a good regional project,
Possibly, yes.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
regional-
I mean, that's the beauty of it. It does cross
It's
the county
also-
lines.
It also could fall into the Gulf Consortium as well.
So this sounds like
Yeah,
this is different.
yeah. Just keep talking.
The old relay programs were mainly not to rebuild the reef so much, but just to put the oysters in clean water, give them there a certain amount of time, pull them out for harvest. But you're talking to go beyond that and restore the reefs themselves.
This is reef restoration and use it. Man, I'm using words I hate to use here now. You use a substrate, of either rock, fossilized shell, or living shell. Then you can put, Jack Rudlow of the Gulf Specimen said he would offer flora, fauna, whatever it is for this, but there is a concept for using debris, which on top of that substrate, which the spat attached to, which the little baby oysters attached to, which are out there now with all those wild oysters sitting in the restricted waters. And that's the inexpensive route. In Apalachicola Bay, which is different than Appalachia Bay, they are blowing rock onto the bottom on the seabed, and then maybe putting other types of substrate. They're concrete blocks, they're strips, there are all kinds of ways to do it. But the question is, will this debris on this technique that they're talking about, will it work and will it produce? And you could even have comparative reefs too, but you do have different bays and different waters. Did that sound good?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Proud of myself.
Will those reefs be restricted from harvesting for a period of time?
They can, in 18 months, in the research that there is on reef restoration, within 18 months there should be harvesting of oysters. Now, let me tell you, another cruel fact is, if you're a wild oyster harvester, you're limited to 3 bags now, period, a day. That's it, because of the depleted number of wild oysters to harvest. And the reefs can be built, the reefs can be restored when the oyster harvesters cannot harvest oysters, which this year ran from June to September the 31st or something like that. So when they can't make any money from oyster harvesting, they can be restoring the reefs, which should pay off down the road for everybody.
So does this grant propose to introduce new spat into the water, or just create the environment for them to grow on?
Well, there's spat there. The spats are coming from the wild oysters.
Right.
They've got no place to go.
I'm just wondering if is there enough there, and I don't know the answers to these, but is there enough there, or is this something that can combine? We know that the farm-raised oysters, they're wanting to grow a nursery, and is that something that nursery can create spat for this project as well? So kind of bringing the two together.
It depends. There are two kinds of oysters that can be used here on the Gulf waters. The diploid and the triploid. Well, the triploid doesn't reproduce.
Right.
The diploid does. These would all be diploid because they're reproducing.
Have to be, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think
Apparently
so.
the seed, the little baby oysters, there's going to be trillions of them floating around. Right now, they just got nowhere to land.
They just float around.
All this
We've
here-
got a
Waving bye-bye.
project similar to this in our Gulf Consortium. In fact, it's almost identical,
Oh.
the Gulf Consortium
Good.
bucket. So as a regional project, but it's, we can show you that project.
I know that Mr. Rudlow wants to use pine trees as a substrate. I don't think that's been necessarily a proven. Lime rock is the substrate that is sort of permanent and whatever.
It just depends. It just depends. But it is not shunned. Using debris, for the oyster spat to attach to is not shunned at all. One other thing I forgot to mention, the most important thing probably, these fishermen know the water. I mean, they know how to get around in the water. They have boats. They're ready to go, depending on what the decision is on the best way to build the reef restoration. So they're experienced, they're veterans, and they know how to do stuff.
The pine tree idea is, well, it would work. A big storm would just put the pine trees up on shore, so you really don't.
I think one of the problems is, is in the permitting. I mean, you're putting debris in the water, so can you get it permitted? And that's been one objection, but I don't know the resolution to all of that. But I do know that it's listed as one of the ways to
Talk about
improve.
That shell rock they get out of Tate's Hell too, that Chris likes, and then mine is, it's like lime rock, but it's old shells, and I'm assuming but it's a rock.
Well, if you talk to Jack Rudlow, the fossilized shell, you might as well just throw it away. The living shell is far, far better. I have no clue. But that's the beauty of monitoring this project and the monitoring. And the fishermen can be part of that monitoring, is to find out what is best, what does work better. Does it work, does it not? And if not, change it.
Good.
Very good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Got a question maybe for Cherie or for the board. So obviously we've learned today that we've got a little responsibility for a recommendation and maybe a ranking. Ultimately, they're going to make the decision. Do we have any accountability after the fact? This is not like a sub-grant situation where they say, okay, this project worked, this one didn't, and it was number one on your ranking list, but that's just a recommendation since we're not making that decision.
Right. Whoever submits the application will be the grantee, not the county.
Okay.
And obviously, if we submit an application, we'll be the grantee, but
Right.
if Bobby gets awarded, then it's up to those guys to manage it.
Gotcha.
We fall out of it at that point in time.
Good. Okay.
And will we get something like this for your, the county projects? Describing the county projects on the same
Project
form?
form.
And
How
what will
would
we
that
have?
work if there were multiple funding sources and Gulf Triumph was only part of it? This restoration, if the Wakulla Fishermen's Association, are they eligible for the consortium money too? And
Well,
you see what I'm saying? The county may be the only
yeah,
grantee
one
for
of
the
the things we'll tell
consortium.
you is we've got both Restore Act as well as Restore Act Pot 1 as well as Gulf Consortium funding for an artificial reef program for fishing, but also a restoration program for oysters out over a 15-year period.
Is that the third fund, which is,
The third fund is Triumph Gulf Coast.
so,
This is the biggest of the three.
This is the biggest of the three, but we've got, in our Gulf Consortium and Restore Act, we have those two projects, artificial reefs and oyster bed restoration, moving out over.
I don't understand how you
They
could
don't start immediately.
mix the three pots of money. If we're the grantee for two of those pots, can the Wakulla Fishermen's Association be the grantee for the third pot, even though they're all one project? See what I'm saying? Cherie, you see what I'm saying?
We had to partner.
which project does,
We said we're not going to be partnering in, other than we would be the grant, we would be, if we get it in Gulf Consortium, if we get a regional Gulf Consortium project, that we'll be the grantee, period. And then
Sub-grantee.
Sub-grantee, and then we will farm it all out.
Which project does this particular, which part does this particular project best fit in?
It best fits in the one that she presented is probably the Gulf Consortium, is what I would say.
That's not the one we're
It's a
talking about
regional.
today.
It's more of a regional.
That's a regional, yeah.
Regional project as well as it's environmental restoration, et cetera, and Triumph is geared more towards economic development, some environmental, but it's heavier into the.
That doesn't mean it couldn't play a
It
part in it.
couldn't apply, but it's still, we've got that shown in our Gulf Consortium and Restore Act Policy.
One way you could structure it is like Daniel was saying, you would have like a workforce element where people would need to be trained to do the monitoring, and it could be a partnership where maybe Gulf Consortium pays for the material, the permits, the design, and the construction, but then Triumph might come in for the workforce element and create a workforce program to train everyone and certify them to do the monitoring. So that could be maybe where Triumph comes from, is creating a program so that people could get trained. So it could be that when you take the project and you start dissecting it and you see that you've got all these different elements, then you may want a different pot may be more appropriate for funding a particular element of the program, so that one pot doesn't have the burden of the whole program.
And one of the things that we're looking at doing is either Pot 1 or Restore Act or the Gulf Consortium is up front spending some dollars on some science on exactly where is it, what our ecosystem is like here truly. Is it feasible? Are we wasting our money? You know what I mean? We got to figure out and get some sort of a game plan moving forward before we say, okay, now we're ready to step off to do anything. But we feel like we need that science to say, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do, here's where you should do it, here's where you shouldn't do it, and here's a program going forward.
I think where that would fit as well is I've heard the oystermen tell us many times that Ms. Peck mentioned the restricted beds, and there's a lot of those beds around St. Mark's and Wakulla River mouth into the bay there, and we've heard the state tell us that there's perfectly good, fully grown oysters there, and there's times of the year that they're perfectly fine to eat, but they can't predict it. They can't figure out a model to know when to open it and when to close it. So if we could have that science that would predict that, then it could be treated just like the unrestricted beds, and then, that just opens up more.
Our diploids on our oyster program, they're putting out a tremendous amount of seed or spat. Those oyster bars in front of Oyster Bay, if they were refurbished, the production of our oysters there in Oyster Bay now would completely cover them, because we're getting a big cover right now with our cages and so forth. But if you need that substrata for them to attach to.
Sure. There's a lot of projects and a lot of moving parts on all of this.
So we've heard, what, six projects today, is that right?
We've got our two projects for the county are the first responder communication system, which that's one I was speaking about earlier, where we went to the legislature, it was approved and got through the governor's office. They said go see Gulf Triumph, Triumph Gulf Coast, and this has replaced our existing aging and also unrepairable communication system, where we would communicate with our federal, state, local, fire, EMS, sheriff's department, all the county-wide communications, is to replace that system. And working with eight counties for a potential regional project. We've talked to Franklin County as well as Liberty County and Gulf County about a possible regional project for this. There's a couple of different technologies out there. Some of it's digital, and then the other part is the old system that we had looked at was slurs. Yes, slurs. But we're finding that the digital system may end up being better than the slurs. It's just we're going to spend some money we're working with the Sheriff's Department now to do some investigative work to find out which is best for Wakulla County. We're going to spend a little bit of money to find out what's best for and then also Franklin County. They'll have to spend their money for that, but what is best? Is it slurs or is it a digital system? Each of them are going to, no matter which one, is going to cost about $2 million. So we're going through that process, and that's money that we're putting into the kitty to go ahead and find out what we need so that we have a shovel-ready project to present to the board.
How does a project like Bobby's, he says he needs $9 million. How do we fund that? Of course, we can't fund it all at once. I would expect that that's not going to be funded all at once. But how do you divide that project up?
Well, we won't be funding it. The Triumph board will be funding that.
Well,
that's right, but we'll have to work with them on allocation. It's all according to how the Triumph board does that. They may say, hey, this is going to be a regional project, so we're going to throw in some of the Triumph boards, some of their money, some of it will come from Wakulla, maybe some of it from Jefferson, and not Franklin. And so that's what I mean. We'll have to kind of wait and see and work with that board to figure out our cash flow.
So basically, we would make a recommendation. Bobby brings that to us, and we say, yeah, we would recommend this project. Then it's between Bobby and Gulf Triumph.
It's between and what Bobby will have to work out is a cash flow to say, okay, if I get the project in May, if y'all say, yeah, it's okay to go in May, here's when the money's going to flow, and here's how I see the flow, just like I present you guys, here's the flow of dollars, and heck, it may be 2020 by the time he spent everything, and therefore then we say, okay, then they'll Triumph Gulf Coast, they'll recalculate and say, okay, now we have, the first year, now we've got $9 million more in Wakulla County we can spend, or $9 million, and that's the way they'll work that, just like we do our cash flows.
I guess basically what I'm asking is you've got 6 projects. You can't give all that money to one project. So a particular project, when Gulf Triumph is working with that project, we sort of would have to know how much of our money that is when they work with a person who has the project. They sort of have to come back to us. So we can say we can't allocate all that.
Well, no. What we're going to do is we're going to submit the projects to our recommendations, and then we're going to sit on our hands.
Yeah, we don't have any final decisions.
Yeah, and we're going to sit on our hands, and then they'll say, here's what we're funding, here's the pace of funding, and then I'll go and recalculate my spreadsheet for funding. Then I'll come to you guys and say, here's what we got left, and here's what they're funding. Okay, the other project, as we've talked about in the past, is a new library. We've got, our county has grown, as you know. We want to move the library to a more centrally located area at the community center to meet our growing demands. Our library is busting loose, and we've got a small library versus our per capita population here in our county, which is, I said that wrong, and this will provide space for participation at current new events. The existing library will be repurposed and used for a much-needed fire EMS station in the Medark area. So it's a dual purpose. One is to get the library up to where our central part of our population is. Our library is probably one of the heaviest used libraries in the Northwest Florida, I'd be willing to bet. And also we would repurpose that. We're getting ready to have to build a new fire EMS station in the Medark area, and this we'd automatically be able to move into this facility as well. So that's our 2 county projects. So together that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 projects that have been presented here today, and that's all that we got at this time. Now we'll be consolidating these or looking at these, and we'll be presenting these back to you on November 6th.
Right. Very good.
Okay.
How much is the new library?
We're budgeting $3.5 million. I think we just made that decision.
I want to make sure they don't
Yeah.
have anything involved.
Do you have anything else that any other projects you want to see thrown in this first phase, or you want to go with, like I say, that's 8 projects that we've got. There'll be more cycles This is a rolling thing,
Sop Choppy have a specific project? That's
not at
in
this
that
point in
8
time.
When
Not at
will
this
the
point in
next cycle roll around?
I would imagine they'll probably wait till they get through this wave, and then they'll clear their heads and tell us probably in January or February.
To get into this,
I don't want to speak for you guys. Y'all go ahead.
basically getting through this wave, what is the time period in getting through this wave?
Well, it's going to be a rolling process.
Yes.
So, I wouldn't expect, the Triumph Board really wants to put some money out on the street, get it out of the bank, working before the next legislative session or the early part of next year. That may be 1 or 2 projects in 1 or 2 counties. The ones that are closest along and ready to go, are likely to be ones that the Triumph Board selects because they've got a real good likelihood of success and they've got all their backup ready to go. But remember, they're going to evaluate. The Triumph Board is meeting once a month. They're going to evaluate projects and determine spend. And so they will look at their list of priorities and see where they are, what regions they need to spend money in, and they're going to make the best decisions they can.
So could we basically update our list every month before their meeting?
Absolutely.
Till the money's gone,
Till the
we
money's
can
gone.
keep running projects.
And this is
Or changing our priorities?
Yeah.
I would
Correct.
assume, yes.
And I would recommend to you, the easier you can make their job, the better. So if you could give them a plan on how you'd like to see your money spent. Doesn't mean they're going to accept it, but the easier you can make their job, the better, I would say.
The way I see this, they need to start out with home runs. They don't need to start out with striking out. And if you got a project, and I'm just making this up, but you got a project and said, okay, I only need 33%, and we'll come up with the other 66%, and we're gonna, recover our expenses in 2 years, and then we're gonna have a 3-to-1 return on investment every year thereafter. And I'm just making that up, but something along those lines so they can say, well, man, this is low-hanging fruit right here. They've got the data to support it. And this other one, we need 100%, and this kind of a coin flip, it's just going to increase the likelihood that those guys can go after a home run.
Right. And a couple other things I'll tell you, and Mr. Shelf will correct me if I'm wrong. The Triumph Board may or may not have their economic advisor in place on November 8th. There was a strong preference to utilize Dr. Rick Harper from the University of West Florida, who's worked with the Florida Senate and worked with the Gulf Coast Economic Consortium in the past. But if Dr. Harper or some other economic advisor is there, all the applications will come in. They're going to be scored individually as to their merit by another scoring team, and the scores are going to be not necessarily numerical scores, but kind of A, B, this is an A project, B project, C project, and then those will go to the economic advisor, who will kind of say, this is the realistic return on investment I see, this is how it'll impact household income in the region, and then the board will have to sort of take all that information, and there may be, Gulf County may not have a single A project, but they've got to allocate $15 million to Gulf County. So Gulf County may have a C project that gets funded before one of your A projects. But that's a function of their money is there, and we have to spend it there. If all your projects scored A's and there were more than $15 million, all of them likely wouldn't get funded. But that's the discretion the board has to weigh. And so getting your information in early so that the economic advisor can do his work and give his counsel to the board is important. So I applaud all of you for taking this step. This is the first county I know of that's this far along in the process and with some pretty well-developed ideas and proposals. So you all should take great pride in that.
What about the phasing of the funding? Ms. Peck said that their project will be over 5 years. Even if it's $2 million, it may only be $750,000 a year. I don't know what we're doing this part, then this part, then this part. That takes away from the total of the 15 million, right? Obviously.
Well, for that part of the allocation, yes. Once they allocate the money, it'll sit there. But Triumph does not want to be the first dollars in any project. So you'll have, I suspect that when a project is awarded funds, there'll be a contract and there'll be funding milestones. So say in year one, you're going to, let's say it was a school board project, just as an example. Well, we want you to spend your $750,000 first to move the bus station or the bus depot. Once you do that, we'll release X million dollars for you to rehab the old facility and turn it into a new facility. Once that's complete, we'll release X number of dollars to buy the furniture, fixtures, and equipment needed to run that facility. And so I suspect you'll have milestones that you'll need to meet before funding triggers are pulled.
And that's just like any other grant program that we run.
You ask about other projects, it'd probably be a small project compared to these scales, but since public infrastructure is a project, I'd like to see us do something with the rec park. Let's go ahead and put something together and I know we've got the new building we just bought at the last meeting, but, continue to upgrade services there, new restroom facilities, new clubhouse facilities, that sort of stuff. I don't think it'd be a big ask, but I think it'd go a long way with, public infrastructure.
And I got just a thought, talking about relocating or realigning Old Shell Point, or actually 61 through the state. Maybe this could, if we do PD, and if we get PD paid for, and we get the land swap, maybe this could help pay for the construction of the road, because that certainly affects our economic development.
It does, you're right.
And it's public infrastructure.
Now, piggybacking on Ralph's,
How did I know where you were going?
Ralph's item.
I know what you're going to say, but...
Yeah.
We all do. Swap, right?
Yeah, but, having skin in the game, we're going to have the land that we are getting from the government. That's our skin in the game on a rec park. A rec park is it's an income generator. It's and if we can get some of this money to start development of that rec park, but somewhere we got to start, and we need to be able to use some of this money on that, because with the land that we have, that's our skin in the game.
And we've got that, this is actually in our plan.
Okay.
We're gonna be, we're not quite ready for that for this.
Okay,
for this
well,
tranche yet.
just don't leave that out in the wind.
First need to own the land.
Pardon?
Don't own the land.
First,
I understand that, but I just
But
want
you're
to
right.
keep,
You're exactly right.
well, Ralph goes to tournaments all the time. And how many people show up at those tournaments?
Oh, a lot. It's volleyball, so it's a little different. It's inside, but buildings in Orlando where there's 100 courts and 200 teams all playing all at one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to many girls softball tournaments where there'd be 4,000 or 5,000 people, and it would be just especially in Albany. We used to come down from Atlanta to Albany, and there'd be 5,000 people there.
Well, and what I'm going to do also is I'm going to resend out our 15 or 20 year spending for capital projects that have to do with the Restore Act Gulf Consortium, so that you guys will see the pacing that we've put out. We've done the planning that we've done for the pacing, so you'll see in the out years, what we're planning on asking Gulf Triumph for, and Restore Act Pot 1 and Gulf Consortium, and even down to what granting agencies we're going to ask for funding. So I'll resend that out to you, and some of you will look at it, some of you won't.
I've got a sewer lift station named after me, and probably an intersection going to be named after me. So I need a ball field.
You need a ball field.
I need a ball field.
So is there any chance that we submit a project at 100% and the board says, well, we like the project, but we like it at 50%? Is there any of that, or is it going to be, put that on the shelf, and if you can come up with the other 50%, we like that project, or some percentage there?
There's absolutely a chance of that. I don't know that's something that you're necessarily going to hear Triumph say, come back with 50%, and we'll fund the other 50%.
Right.
They may say, come back and reapply when you have some more funds, and we'll reconsider.
Right.
Because the board does not want to allocate or obligate itself to any more money than it has. And I think they've also expressed an intent to hold some money back, because we never know what's going to happen.
Right.
And priorities could change if we had another significant event in the Gulf Coast or in our region, and they want to have some money ready to deploy quickly if they need it.
Very good.
Well, since we're talking about our pet projects, I'll talk about Indian Springs. The state made an offer on it, and it wasn't accepted, but if we went in partnership with them and, match some of our fund, these Gulf Triumph funds for the state funds, maybe we can get that into public hands and build us a campground up there at the state park.
Yeah.
So,
That would
possibility.
That would actually bring money into the county.
that would bring money into the county. You could build a diving facility, a recreational facility that would attract people from all over the country and all over the world.
Now, the earlier time, we tried to do a riding facility around Wakulla Springs, and it was shot all over the place.
That was the Cherokee Sink project.
That
Yeah,
was the Cherokee Sink project, and I'm not, we're not talking about that. We're talking about a place that's in private hands right now and needs to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is a good usage where the county would have ability to protect it, or the state would have ability to protect it and move it right forward.
I can agree with you on that.
There you go. Do we have any other citizens that haven't spoken that would like to, or anyone? Employees, staff?
You got some more stuff? You done?
All right, Commissioner Hess, were you talking about the Triumph used to make up the difference for the Camp Indian Springs and help?
Match, well, they're not, basically, the state's not buying the buildings. Okay, if we were focused on building a campground, maybe we could buy the buildings to build the campground, and just the state buy the property.
Okay, I'll get with you.
Yeah.
Okay. And just another FYI, sorry, losing my voice these days. Me and my counterparts in the other 7 counties have been talking, and we'll be meeting in a couple of weeks because we're going to share information from all of our counties, and we're looking at way that we can leverage projects that we have and make more regional projects have a better and a further reach. And so I'll be coming back with some ideas from what comes out of this group. But we had a really good phone call last week, and a lot of good ideas and ways that we can all work together. And we kind of agreed, among ourselves, that even though there's a project that may be in Escambia County that has no impact on us, but we would support Escambia County and they would do the same for us, so that we continue that synergy that we developed with the BP oil spill. We want to see that same synergy and all that love going back and forth with 8 counties through this whole process.
And I just follow up on that. Like she said, we're participating well with other 7 counties, but understand this is a long-term game. Restore Act, Gulf, but it's also the largest infusion of capital in Northwest Florida in the history of the state of Florida. Any one-time shot over a 15-year period, and the good news is we're all stewards of that now, which is great, and that means we also have an awesome responsibility. And that's what we're taking serious, and I appreciate everybody showing up. And like I say, we all have to cooperate. And this is something it's a long game. So patience, grasshopper.
Yes. Anything further? Anyone?
Ashley?
I need your card.
I remember when Ashley was born. She's a true Sop Chopian, right, Ashley?
All right.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you.
Huh?